HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Tabard Inn, new American cuisine in one of Washington, D.C.'s oldest hotels, located in DuPont Circle. For more information, visit tabardinn.com.
This week, Meat and Three is taking you to market and all over the world, from Newfoundland to Tunisia.
Well, a lot of us think of, the British Empire trading things like spices and sugar and silk. But you write that it actually began with salt cod from Newfoundland.
There was a port closure in Tunisia, which was horrible. I mean, it was months, boats just setting on the water waiting to go, and they couldn't go anywhere.
And we'll learn about how markets have changed, whether because of their customers or the climate.
A few years ago, something around 10 years, it was totally different.
It almost manifests itself to almost smelling like an old fire pit. When you put it out, it has that sort of charcoal-y smell to it. It's not good for wine.
Join us this week on Meat and Three for our global market tour. And don't forget to subscribe to Meat and Three wherever you listen to podcasts. Hello, this is Lisa Held coming to you live from Roberta's in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and you're listening to The Farm Report, a Heritage Radio Network show about the people, processes, and policies that shape how food is produced today. So I have a great guest in studio who I'm excited to introduce shortly, but before I do that, I have some big Farm Report news to share. So today is actually the last episode of the summer season, and it's also the last episode that I'll be recording from Heritage Radio Network's amazing shipping container studio at Roberta's in Brooklyn. I feel a little emotional about it. It's such a great spot. I love this studio, but no worries. The show will continue on. When we come back in September, I'll be recording the Farm Report live on Full Service Radio at the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. And the important thing for listeners to know is it will be the same Heritage Radio Network show that you know and I guess hopefully love. And you'll be able to find episodes on the exact same Farm Report page on heritageradionetwork.org. Or listen in the same place if you're using a podcast app. Nothing's going to change on that front. You don't have to do a thing. But I wanted to let you know that we'll be broadcasting from DC because you might notice more farm policy guests, for instance, more farmers from the Mid-Atlantic as opposed to the Hudson Valley. And of course, we'll continue to talk about agriculture from both a local and national perspective, maybe even more national perspective given the nature of DC. So if you're in DC or you know someone near DC that you think should be a guest, feel free to email me at lisaelaineh@gmail.com and keep up with updates on Instagram at _farm_report. We'll still be posting lots of stuff on there until we come back in September. And one last thing, just a shout out to the engineers here at Heritage Radio Network that have been keeping my show going and helping me out. Amanda's in the studio today. She's amazing. Jeet recorded the show with me for a long time, and Matt has been engineering the show with me pretty much the entire past year. I will miss you guys a lot. Okay, to today's show. So I am here in studio with Chris Starkus, a chef farmer all the way from Denver, where he owns Lost Creek Micro Farm and is the chef at the restaurant Urban Farmer. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for your patience. I had to get all that out, It's sort of
Agreed. Congratulations. Well, that's awesome.
Thank you. So you're the chef at Urban Farmer, and you also are an urban farmer.
Correct.
So which role came first?
Definitely chef.
Okay.
That was definitely the first thing we did. I went to school in Vegas. I was in Vegas for 12 years, went up to Portland, Oregon. I was a private chef for a little while, and that's kind of where I went to a gardening class through Oregon Tilth, and started to grow for the family I was working for. And then I had a lot of farmer friends in Portland, things like that. As I started working, the original Urban Farmer is in Portland, Oregon. I grew the rooftop beds there, built them and grew from there, as well as the rooftop apiary. I started beekeeping there as well. So kind of started rolling into that connection and being very close to the restaurant at that point in time.
Okay.
I want to say that was like 2013, I think, is that right? And so as we started to grow there, I understood a lot more about, hey, what can I grow in season? What can I transfer to the restaurant? What's going to make the biggest impact?
Interesting. So you were growing really for your own menus.
Correct.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
And so what is the farm that you have now? What does it look like? Give us like a sort of picture of what you've got going.
So Lost Creek Micro Farm is next to my house.
Okay.
And so we are on a half acre. A quarter of that, it's literally a rectangle, and half of it, then you're looking at the house. The right-hand side is the farm. So that itself is a rectangle. We have a greenhouse on there that's about 6 by 8. I have 5 hives. I caught a lot of swarms this year, so we started with 1 and actually went up to 5. And then just basically straight rows. We have about 23 rows, and then some up front. And then there's a mix of flowers and vegetables. We do a lot of drip irrigation. We have a well on the property as well, so that's where we get all the watering from, and that's been the delivery system. We added some pallet planters this year next to the driveway to grow some more esoteric kind of herby greens in as well.
Interesting. And did you have that space? Like, was that part of your property already and you just decided to turn it into a farm, or did you have to acquire land?
No, it was part of the space. And then it has been wood chips for a while, so we decided to, especially when we moved to Denver. So we've only been in Denver for 2 years now.
Okay.
And so the first year we did it, my wife and I said, we wanted to have a garden. We grew some stuff, and it was probably the most prolific garden we had. Being in Portland, you didn't have the sun that you do in Denver.
Oh, interesting.
So that intensity grew a lot, and it was almost like kind of Jack and the Beanstalk-ish. We were like, wow, this is amazing soil. And so we started to put it all together and make sure and expand it. And we both kind of talked, said, you know what? The first year we did it with a lawn, not lawn sprayer, water, those oscillating ones.
Oh yeah.
And I would go, I'd turn the well on and move it 3 times a day, and then we thought, well, there's got to be a better way to do this, and so we wound up working with some drip irrigation and got that down, and then we did that last year and this year, and it's been very, very nice.
Do you use a lot less water with that system?
100%, and then. We definitely do, but I think that especially watering at night and on the shoulder parts of the day, especially when we're hot in Denver, like, in 80s, 90s, 100 when you're getting up there, that delivery system puts a lot more water in the ground, but also for things like tomatoes that don't like to have water in the leaves, that was the other part of it too, so we don't have any aphids or any diseases like that.
Do you grow organically?
100%, yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the other part of this too, is that's the life that we kind of lead as well, and so we want to make sure that we can, even though the yields sometimes aren't as high, but the flavors and whatnot are there. I have 2 kids as well, and so that's the secondary part, is teaching them where their food comes from, how to grow it, and then how to enjoy it, and really enjoy a lot of things that maybe most kids don't get to see or whatnot. So it's a joy for us when, they go into the garden, and sometimes they're picking stuff too prematurely, like the little baby carrots and things like that. And at first, it used to stress my wife and I out. I'm like, oh, what are they doing? You know, and, like they're picking green tomatoes. But at the end of the day, it was like, hey, they're out there. That's great. And then, of course, now as they get older, they realize that they can when to eat them, and they know the difference now. And that's a prideful thing for my wife and I. You know, they know that.
Yeah. I think like so much of my food philosophy and my interest in food still comes from just being in my mom's garden as a kid. Just like being sent out to pick tomatoes and string beans, and it's crazy how that stuff stays with you.
But it just tastes better.
Yeah.
You know,
right. And I remember that. Like I remember the taste of like a cherry tomato that's hot in the sun and you put it in your mouth. It's like, it does. You're like, you remember that's a good taste you want to have the rest of your life.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much are you producing on the farm, and then where does the food end up? Is it all go to the restaurant?
Yeah, so we do a market just for our community. We normally do it on Thursdays. Then my daughter and son run that. So that's part of their kind of quote-unquote lemonade stand, if you will. So they can pick it, but that's the rules, is that they have to run it. And we'll help them with the money and things like that. But they'll set it up, and I think we're probably going to do that in the next 2 weeks or so, as it's been a later season this year.
Okay.
But the rest of it goes to the restaurant. And so the interesting part is I'll get up in the morning, especially right now in season. So we have greens, arugula, mizuna, things like that. I'm trying to think about everything, peppers and tomatoes and edible flowers and these herbs. And so I normally talk to my chefs. We have our chef meeting on Friday. I'll let them know, hey, this is what's coming up in the garden. Plan for the squash to come. Summer squash is coming out. We're going to have tomatoes. And so it just kind of changes where we order from during that period of time, because the growing season is not too very long. And so we kind of communicate that out. I'll pick stuff in the morning, wash it. We have our own, washing sinks and things like that, and then bring it in the restaurant. And all the cooks and everybody knows too. Like they'll see me coming through, and I'll have people help me out, and they know that we've picked a bunch of stuff from the farm, and it gets everyone excited. For whatever specials we have that weekend, we'll pre-shift what's from the farm and talk about it with our guests. One of the most recent things we did is I wanted to grow. We do a lot of table side stuff at the restaurant, and we have a Caesar on our menu. We do some steakhouse stuff like that, and so.
Right.
I said, well, how can we kind of do the Caesar different? So I grew this red romaine. We also have 23 chickens on the property as well.
Gosh.
So my son does chickens and 4-H through them. And so we use the eggs as well.
Eggs?
So I thought,
okay.
how can we do this? And we basically did a tableside Caesar. So we used the romaine from the farm. We used the eggs from the chickens and made a thing of it. And so we have, I think, about maybe 50 more heads after that, but we've probably sold over 300 this season.
That's awesome.
And it's been great, because again, it's just the flavor, like we were talking about, the flavors are different.
Yeah.
So it is romaine lettuce, but once we are able to tell the story through our staff and tell people about it, they're interested and excited to try it. And then of course, when you've had a farm chicken egg versus something that's mass produced, there's a big flavor difference there too.
Right. Absolutely. And are you using honey too from the hives at the restaurant? Are you selling honey or?
Yes, we use hives. So I have 5 hives at the farm, but I have 3 on the rooftop at the restaurant downtown.
Oh my gosh.
So that's
Okay.
6 stories up. And I do what's called, so I've been beekeeping for about 5 years. I'm in the master beekeeping program through Colorado. I'm on my 2nd level right now. And so through that period of time, I've done top bar, I've done foundation, Langstroth, and now I'm doing foundationless on the rooftop, so that we can cut honeycomb. And so we cut honeycomb for cheese plates, our charcuterie boards, and right now one of our foie gras dishes that we have on the menu. And so that's something that it gave a sense of place. Like people understand that it's on the 6th floor, right? And so when we were in Portland, that was kind of the learning experience. We were in Portland, we extracted all the honey, and yes, it tasted great, but it looked like just the honey that you would buy in the store,
Okay.
right? And so I thought, well, how can we do it different? We went to Denver, and I started working with the foundationless. And so we cut that comb, whatever wax there is. I actually make lip balms that we sell at the spa next door as well from that wax. So we can kind of do what I call like a whole hive philosophy. We're using everything there, pollen, wax, and honey. So that whole extraction happens through those rooftop hives.
What do you? I don't actually know what foundationless means. What does that mean with honey?
Well, generally with Langstroth, you have the classic box ones you're seeing that have 10 frames.
Okay.
There's normally a plastic insert between there, and the bees build on both sides. You generally decap the honey, you put it in an extraction machine that spins it, and then what's the term I'm trying? That centrifugal force pulls it out.
Okay.
And generally those hexagons are left on there, and then you put them back in. The bees clean them up, and they'll use them again. So you normally don't necessarily, and it's a little bit less wax. So the foundationless is there's just remove the plastic. And so they'll build the whole comb in that same frame still. It's a little bit more, you need to manage it more because they will do what's cross combing, so they won't actually stay with the lines. Sometimes they'll go from one and then work their way to the third one or something like that. So during the season as they're building, you got to stay on top of it a little bit more so that you get those straight comb.
Okay.
And so that's the difference. And so that way you can just cut the comb right off. We have a holder in the restaurant that is on our charcuterie station, and it's out there for everyone to see. And then as we get dishes in, we'll remove the glass, cut it off, and leave it there so you can see it at all times.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
I really like this idea too of a master beekeeper. I don't think I've ever heard that terminology.
Okay.
What is the training like to become a master beekeeper?
So I started the program when I was in Oregon, and it's through OSU out there.
Okay.
And so that first level was more about, being around hives, but understanding the education and doing the book work and tests. And so that was a 1-year program. I had to have a mentor, which was one of my friends, Ryan. He was helping me with the rooftop hives, a company called Bee Local out there.
Okay.
And so I worked with him, who was in the program at the second level and had to mentor me. So we worked through the seasonality of it, talked through all the diseases, and basically beekeeping habits. I always joke that beekeeping is kind of like religion. There's a million ways to do it. There's not necessarily a lot of wrong answers. There's a couple things that you can do wrong, but mostly you're going to do right. And so there's 3 steps to that. I'm in the journeyman level right now, mentoring other students in town, and then also building my education. I have a bunch of research projects on like varroa mite and beetles and things like that. Nectar flows and just charting out where my hives are at, how I'm feeding them. Everything I'm doing so that I kind of like 4-H, if you will. Like I'm putting my whole booklet together on what I'm putting into it, and then as well as then I can pass another test. That this process has taken about 2 years. I should finish it in spring, all the research projects. Once I do that, I can get to the 3rd level, which is the master beekeeping level. And to be honest with you, I know it's a higher education. I'm not sure exactly what the what all is entailed there.
Right.
But I know that you're working with other people that have their masters in it, and then kind of just working off that community and best practices, if you will.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's so much science to beekeeping, and
Very much so.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is. It's a fun thing, and it's a fun thing to share because generally everyone I run into loves honey.
Yeah,
So,
it's a pretty hard thing not to like.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed.
I'm curious about Denver's urban farm environment. So, are there a lot of urban farms?
There's a good amount of them. A lot of them up in Boulder. We work with a lot of ones downtown now. There's one down there, Altius Farms, which is a greenhouse. They do a lot of greens there. I work with Josh a lot over at Acres, which is a technical school out in Lakewood. And so he has, I think it's about 5 acres out there. And he's actually teaching high school kids farming as well, which is nice to work out there. And he's actually one of the guys I'm mentoring in beekeeping this year. It's his first year taking beekeeping. He's a former chef as well. And so he's also teaching kids out there, relatively, for lack of a better term, seeding the next generation, which I think is a very important thing when we were talking about kids before. And then there's a lot of them up in Boulder that we're working with. There's Cure Organic Farm that's out there. Esoteric Farms is out there as well, working with them as well. And a lot of people actually doing some mushrooms. They're working with Thomas Bailey. He's Kingdom Come Mushrooms, and we get a lot of lion's manes and stuff from him. So there is a lot going on, and especially coming from Portland. I was surprised how much was going on and how awesome it was. I mean, there's a lot of people doing some great ranching as well. But there's a lot to work with, and a lot of passionate people in Denver that we've been lucky to work with, and hopefully we'll find more.
Yeah. And is it mostly, I mean, like in New York, a lot of our urban farms are on rooftops just because of the way the city is set up.
Sure.
In Denver, is it mostly on land, or
Yes.
do you have the,
Yeah, mostly arable soil. There's a lot of people doing micros. We work with Mountain Man Micro Farms. He does a lot of his stuff inside as well. But I would say, it's mostly arable soil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I guess it's just a space thing here. It's like there's so many
Correct.
buildings, right? We have more rooftop space than we have land here.
Correct.
Right?
Well, and the difference is most of the urban farming you would see would be marijuana in Denver,
In
right?
Denver,
So that's where a lot of those spaces in the city are taken up for. So people are pushed out to do more farming that way.
Well, because so much of the marijuana growing is indoor, right? Yeah.
Yep, and warehouses there.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. Okay, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the restaurant and how you work with other farmers in Colorado. We'll be right back.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by Tabard Inn. Tabard Inn, Washington, D.C.'s quintessential hotel, is located on a quiet, tree-lined street just 5 blocks from the White House. Vibrant yet unassuming, the Tabard is comprised of 40 sleeping rooms, each unique in character and design. Feast on an eclectic American cuisine in their acclaimed restaurant, or enjoy a cocktail and listen to live jazz in one of their cozy Victorian seating areas. Mingle with travelers from around the world who find the Tabard the only place to stay when taking their travels to Washington. For more information, visit tabardinn.com.
All right, we're back. You're listening to The Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network. I'm here with Chris Starkis, chef farmer from Urban Farmer in Denver. So we were talking a lot about your farm, Lost Creek Micro Farm, before the break. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about your work as a chef, especially because that's what you've been doing longer, right?
Correct. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. At the restaurant, it's called Urban Farmer, so I imagine that there's a lot of attention to where the food comes from.
Yes, yep.
So in addition to your farm, how much of the food that you source at the restaurant is grown locally?
I would say about 75. As we get into the winter seasons, it kind of moves down to California, things like that. But as we get closer to the season, it grows, right?
Right.
And so the restaurant is, we focus a lot on steak, but we've been pushing that boundary the last couple of years. Myself and my chef team has been together for about 5 years. A lot of the chefs came down from Portland, Oregon. So we have a strong understanding of what we want to do at Urban Farmer and kind of push it forward there. So we do beef. We have a lot of different styles of beef on the menu. One of the ranchers actually we're highlighting here in New York, Boot Hill 7, is up in Lusk, Wyoming. We get whole animals in from them. We do dry aging and have these special cuts because we do a lot of whole animal butchery through pigs as well. We make our own sausages and charcuterie, which are all, the meat side of things. We use the other stuff that's not necessarily local is obviously seafood because we're landlocked.
Right.
But we do a lot of seafood preparations, incorporating a lot of the ingredients from the local farms we were talking about. And then from there, a lot of the vegetables as well. We were talking about acres, and there's the farmers market union station there, and we kind of plug all those things in. And so we are open brunch 7 days a week, and then dinner as well. So we don't close for holidays, things like that. So we have a lot of area to work on specials and different menus to push all these ingredients out, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the farm landscape in Colorado lend itself to? Is it easy to source a lot of beef? I would imagine there's a lot of ranches in Colorado.
Yep.
Is there a lot of vegetable production in around the city?
Absolutely, there is. Greens and micros are on the top of the list as far as what people are doing. As far as vegetables and tomatoes and things like that in season, absolutely, there's plenty of that. Beef and pigs and ranchers and lamb, of course, and like I was saying, mushrooms for sure, as well. So a lot of that is easy to get, is very local. Up in Fort Collins and Boulder and down south.
Right.
Local grains as well. A lot of people are growing grains, especially on the eastern part of Colorado. So there's heritage grains that is out there as well. So there's a lot going on, which is great. And so I learn about more and more. There's even people locally roasting chocolate up there. Fortuna Chocolates, people that we work with in Boulder as well. And so there's a lot. It's hard to narrow it down, but every time I learn about more. There's even we're using trout from the San Luis Valley, which is down south, frontier trout down there. And he's a one-man operation. He's got a 26-acre farm down there, and that's local trout that's delivered to Denver, which is 4 hours south, 1 day a week. So we get that in. We do curing. We do whole fish table side as well. And so there's a lot.
Yeah. And on the meat side, I saw that, you're doing nose to tail. Do you buy whole animals?
Yes.
Do you butcher them at the restaurant?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not everything we do. I mean, we get
Okay.
a lot of primals in as well. But I mentioned Boot Heel 7, and then actually this recently I was mentioning my brother, my son was in 4-H, so I bought an animal at 4-H at the auction this just before we left to come here to New York, and we'll highlight that animal as well. And so myself and my chef team, we have 3 full-time butchers there that break down whole fish as well.
Wow.
And so we'll just kind of decide what we want to do with the cattle at that point in time. We know we're going to do tomahawk steaks, we're going to do ribeyes, New York's, tenderloins. That's the easy part. One of my chefs is great at making pastrami, so we'll have him make a bunch of pastrami from the brisket, and then we'll do beef bacon from the belly. We'll obviously do burgers, dry aged burgers, things like that. So we have a plan when this animal shows up. It generally comes in about 4 to 6 pieces, depending on how the processor, we talk to them about how we want it cut. And then we kind of work on breaking it down there. We use the bones for stock. And so everything is 100% used in the restaurant. Yep.
Is it hard to figure out ways to use everything in terms of what people order?
Yes.
Like, for instance, like I've heard, people they like the certain kind of steak, like that cut, right? And then all the other ones are like, so how do you get around that? How do you?
Well, a lot of it's staff training and talking to people about trying something new, because everyone's heard about tenderloins and New Yorks and ribeyes, right? Like that's the easy part, right? So the rest of it is about why these cuts are flavorful. Why is a flat iron flavorful? Why is a culotte flavorful? Why is a bavette flavorful? But also, they're not always just steak on a plate either. So we do some composures, which help with that as well. And then the cooking technique, whether we're braising it, sous videing it or whatnot to tenderize it. And so through our staff trainings and pre-shift, that's something that we educate our servers about so that they can talk to our guests about it and really get them on the idea of like, hey, this is what hole on a butcher is. There's a lot of other parts to this animal. Right. And this is why you should try it, because it's flavorful, whether it's the marbling or where it comes from in the animal. And try something new. And it's not always more expensive at all. Sometimes it's less expensive, and that's something that people don't connect with most of the time.
Yeah. What about buying animals like that? Is it more like, is the cost for you less because you use the whole animal, or is it more expensive to do it that way?
You know what? It kind of goes up and down depending on the producer. So like I was saying, we're working with Boot Heel 7, and a lot of that is about the finish. And so, these are specifically with them, they're all grass fed. They're about 4.5 hours north of where we are. I visited the ranch a number of times and talked to JD and Andrew a lot about kind of what's going on there, but also what they're finishing on and why. And so they actually introduced me to the ultrasound method. So they actually ultrasound the cattle before they're going to finish to see how the marbling is coming out. This is really interesting. We need to get into this. No, this is why it's awesome.
They actually use an ultrasound machine like one of us would encounter at a hospital.
Correct.
And they use that on the cow.
Correct. So there's a guy who
to
does
see
it
inside the cow's body in order
Correct.
to check the marbling.
Check the marbling. And so, again, as we're talking about this, I'm sure you have before, what this is a business too, right?
Right,
so,
of course.
They want it to grade out as high as possible for us. And so they've, hey, do we finish on corn? Or they're using spent grain from some of the breweries as well. And so when they're looking at it and then finishing it to get it as high, that's kind of the whole point. And so we've been working closely with them. So yes, on our side, sometimes it's better or not, but I think as far as the pricing is concerned,
right.
But to me, it's about that story and that connection working with those ranchers. I've learned so much about raising cattle, through them, and then being able to tell those stories through the staff to our guests for that connection of where their food comes from is stronger message than the actual money there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting. So they're grass fed up until that very last
Correct.
Point when they finish it. Yeah.
They'll finish 90 to 120 days before they go to slaughter. And so they'll finish on, he was telling me, he's like, depending on now, he's starting to move from corn over to these spent grains. Cause he's like, once you start
That's cool.
Yeah. So he's like, once you start on this corn, they have that in their diet. They don't necessarily want anything else. So at first he wound up just like feeding it to his horses because his horses were like getting in the barns and eating the spent grain from the brewery. And so he's slowly transitioning over to that because, again, it takes a while to do all these things. And so that's what he was doing last time, was feeding half and half. But like we're talking about the ultrasounding, they want to make sure that they're getting to the highest quality beef, and so understanding where their feed is taking that marbling, and of course the genetics from there. When we went with them, they were only doing yearlings. They weren't even finishing off beef. They weren't there, and so we've been able to work with them. They actually distribute in Denver now. They're really growing, and again, we have our education of how ranching is.
Yeah, I want to meet this guy whose job it is to go to farms and ultrasound the cattle.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy, right? That's someone's job.
My understanding was that he started and got some of the technology from the guy who was developing larger chicken breasts originally, which is where this technology came from, I guess. And so he adapted it to cattle, and it's been amazing. And it's funny because most people haven't heard of this, and I certainly hadn't either. So as we're telling people, sometimes they think we're like crazy getting like too Portlandia on people. Yeah,
back up. We need to just
but
make
it's real.
sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it's real. It's a real thing.
Oh, amazing. And so, it's at the end of the day, Urban Farmer is a steakhouse. So
Right.
you're sort of the meat is kind of the main thing, and then you're bringing in.
Now, with that being said, we also have vegetarian and vegan items on the menu. I think that we're a little bit different in the respect we're not the white tablecloth, ties on our servers restaurant. It's a little bit more relaxed in that way, and I think people are getting used to that. It took people a little while, especially in Denver, to understand, you can have this really high-end experience without having to get dressed up and really be like too stiff, I guess. And so that's the whole point of like, hey, come and sit down. So we have nice natural wood tables. You have, servers that are like engaging and hospitable. And then now we're gonna really focus on the food and of course some of the meat. But at least from my side of things and my chefs as well, is like where we like to push our culinary prowess is basically on some of the vegetables and some of those ingredients because. Like I was saying, Boot Hill 7, they're feeding the animals, they're breaking it down.
Yeah.
We cook it, and it's kind of like an
That's
oyster.
it.
You open it
Yeah.
up, you know what I mean? It's like you just don't mess it up,
Yeah.
right? And there's a way to season it and make sure it's right. But unless it has a composure to it, which is where we like to put our things, that's where we've pushed our boundaries and saying, hey, we have a cauliflower steak on the menu right now that highlights the beets from my farm, some of the edible flowers, and things like that for the seasonal composure. And it's a 100% vegan item. And so we like to talk about that as well, so that people that that want to come to the restaurant don't just think that all we have to offer that is great is meat. And so I always tell people all the time, you can come to Urban Farmer. If you don't have steak, you're not missing the Urban Farmer experience, because I think that we do a lot of things great, including our seafood and vegan and vegetarian items.
Right. I'm curious there's so much talk right now about people eating more plant-based, just, kind of shifting diets to a more plant-based place. In a place like Colorado, I feel like the culture it must be so meat-centric compared to here maybe on the East Coast. Are those same conversations happening about, and do you feel like people are like talking about eating more plant-based?
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely they are.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people out there that love their meat, and of course where it's from, lambs and some of the more game meats, which was different than the Portland market in that respect. But I think too for us is actually reducing the amount of the portion as well, and that's the next thing. I think that's the transition away from just a 20-ounce ribeye, and we're encouraging more like, hey, you should split and try more. One of the things that we have on the menu is a tasting of New York steaks that are grass-fed, grain-fed, 21-day dry age and Wagyu, so people can taste the difference. And so that's anywhere between 3 to 4 6-ounce portions, which I personally can't eat all that. So we encourage people to share and taste and have other items on the menu for that reason as well.
Yeah. That's, it's sort of that idea of just like eat meat, but eat really good meat and in smaller portions. And
agreed. And be conscious about where it's from and understanding where it's from.
Right. Absolutely. One thing I didn't ask you about, which I think will be a good place to kind of finish up, is you have a farm. You are tending hives, chickens, vegetables, and you're running the kitchen at this restaurant. How do you balance all of these different roles?
I mean, we have an amazing team on both ends. I have an amazing family, my wife of 15 years, and my son who's 10, and my daughter who's 5.5. They help out at the farm as well, and really keep it going. And then vice versa, the chefs that I brought here in New York, Ryan and Eric, and our front of the house staff, they help support that because they all love that we and I do this because it's a different part of it's what makes us an urban farmer different. And so everyone's open to supporting that. It's not a solo mission. There's not very many people that can do that. I'm certainly not one of them. So it's because of the team around me that's passionate as well that I'm able to juggle it. And it's not easy at all. It's not, there's times I'm like, geez, but that's the very helpful part.
Yeah. Do you think I had a dairy farmer on, I think it was last week's episode, and she was talking a lot about how her kids help, and now you're talking a lot about how your kids help on the farm. And I asked her this question, and now it makes me want to ask you, just like, do you think your kids will want to go into farming or some sort of food? Like, do they express interest in it?
They do. My son knows how to cook eggs and things like that now. They know when, if in season, if something's not perfect at the grocery store, they won't eat it. And so they know the difference of, like we were talking about before the show, picking a warm tomato from the garden. So I think that connection of knowing where their food comes from and even growing it themselves will resonate with them through their life. So I think so, because the flavor's there, and I think. We went to dinner the other night because my son got a bunch of great ribbons at the 4-H fair for his chickens, right? And they ordered rabbit and lamb, and they had the corn, and they were just loving everything. My daughter was just eating anchovies, these white Boca-Raton anchovies that she had on the sea. And so because they appreciate these things, they know they taste great, and so I think so. I really do think so that it'll resonate through their life.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. This
Thank
is
you
great.
for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you all so much for listening to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and share it. We'll be back on the air in September, live at Full Service Radio at the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. See you then.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.